Welcome to episode 37, where I'm continuing our theme for our second series of Making a Difference When You Travel. This week I share an interview with Hollie Carr, an author, TEDx speaker and fellow solo traveller. This insightful interview covers so many layers of making a difference. Hollie shares how a solo trip to China to teach English inspired her to write a book that would go on to inspire others, how she left a corporate career to follow her happiness and make a difference, how volunteering in Asia opened her eyes, how she started a foundation to help others to make a difference, and also the simple things we can do to make a difference in other people's lives. You don't need to be travelling to do it either. So no matter where you are on your solo journey, this interview is one to make you contemplate about the next stage of your life. Stay tuned. Welcome to Girl About the Globe, a podcast for you, the solo female traveller, empowering women to travel solo with maximum adventure, minimum impact. Welcome to a dose of inspiration for the solo traveller. Today's inspiring interview is with Hollie Carr, a fellow Brit, author, TEDx speaker, and co-founder of Rainmaker Foundation, a community dedicated to making the world a better place for all. Hi Hollie, thanks for joining me today.
Hello, nice to speak to you.
You too. I'm really excited to talk to you. I want to find out more about what you do and how you inspire others with your story. Can you begin by just telling us a bit about your background?
Sure, yes. Well, like yourself and probably many of your readers and followers, I'm a fellow traveller. I love travelling. I did my first round the world trip before university, took a gap year and did the classic sort of 6 months working to earn enough money to go around the world for 6 months, and did Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Hawaii and Canada in that trip, and absolutely loved it. After university thought, okay, I really want to travel again, but rather than just going round aimlessly kind of exploring, I thought, okay, I better do something that adds to my CV, as is the way we need to build up our experiences. So I thought I would go and work in a country, and I chose to go to China and teach English at a university over there, become a foreign expert with the British Council. So that was a great experience. I went and lived there for a year and learnt some Chinese and learnt about the culture and the different, very different ways that the people there live and work and play. So it was a brilliant insight into the culture, and was fascinated by their sort of ancient wisdom, their Chinese traditional medicine, many philosophies that they have that really I hadn't come across before. And it sort of ignited my interest, I suppose, in the Eastern wisdom. India as well as another area, and all across Asia actually there's a lot to be discovered there, and that's contributed to the research I did for the book. But when I came back from China, I got a job at IBM doing corporate communications, and I was working in their laboratory with all their inventors, master inventors we call them, and people who create amazing technologies. And I was just so inspired by these people who were doing great things that I decided to stay there. I was only supposed to be working there for 6 months, and I planned to go back to China, but I got involved in the innovation process and loved the fact that people were creating these technologies that could change people's lives. So I started inventing things myself and filed a couple of patents or patents, depending on where you're from, and ran an innovation campaign for IBM in the UK and Ireland. And then I started working at a global level with their research, development and innovation, working with the scientists and developers across their technology, and really loved it. So I ended up staying at IBM for a good number of years. And as I originally went in as a temp just to cover maternity leave, I then applied to the graduate scheme and was fast-tracked through that, and was very fortunate to be chosen as one of their future potential leaders and put on the Leadership Development Programme, which was a multi-million-pound 2-year programme, which had amazing exposure to different sides of the business, and I got to work with incredible leaders and to lead teams internationally as well. So working with people who spoke different languages, had different cultures, particularly people in Spain, for example, who wanted to have siestas and would have to work around things like that. So it was very interesting working across different cultures and languages. But there came a time, I was actually at TED, the Global Thought Leader Conference, where we were a sponsor, and all these people were on the stage talking about how they were changing the world and the amazing things they were doing, and they're very inspirational people. And I think someone asked a question about why do you do the things that you do? And that question really got into my head. I couldn't answer it. I was really sort of stuck as to why am I doing what I do. I was on an amazing career ladder, working full on days and doing amazing sort of global strategy and working with incredible teams, but I didn't know why. I didn't know what my sole motivation was.
Yeah.
I wasn't motivated by the money, or I'd sort of achieved the things that I set out to achieve with my career. I'd won awards and the sort of shorter term things in terms of building and leading teams of people and helping them to achieve excellent results, which is where I'd got the satisfaction. So I wasn't really sure what was next. I got this sort of sticky feeling that I was missing something, and I couldn't answer my question as to why I was doing it. So I decided to take a bit of a sabbatical. I went off back to Asia, back to China, and travelled solo from Beijing down to Hong Kong and then across down to Thailand. And I worked, or volunteered rather, with sort of displaced communities, so illegal immigrants or people who had fled from along the border of Burma and Thailand. There's a lot of different communities that get displaced, a lot of problems and challenges that they face. And so there was a lot of people who didn't have education, healthcare. They weren't considered residents, but they were desperate to learn English or to come up with a way that they might be able to secure their future. So I worked with some amazing people there and learnt a huge amount about myself, as well as some character traits of humans, I suppose. I gave a TED talk about what makes you happy, and that was based on a lot of the lessons that came from that journey. Just the final part, I suppose, of that journey of exploration was when I came back from that sabbatical. I decided I wouldn't go back to the corporate world, but instead would help set up this charity, which the aim was to inspire people and to make generosity more effective. So people want to make a difference, but often don't know where to start or how to do it most effectively. And so we're a bit like matchmakers, connecting people who wanted to give something, whether it be time, money, skills, expertise, experience, contacts, but they had something to give, and everybody does, with the charities that most needed it. So we were kind of matchmaking the two together to ensure that the results were both inspiring and effective for the givers, the donors, but also for the charities. They were getting what they needed in a direct route.
That's a great
So
idea.
yeah, that was what led me to here. And I then went on maternity leave and decided, okay, what would I really like to do? And it was about finishing the book that I'd started writing on my sabbatical. Published it or launched it in January 2016. It's been a gathering together of lots of different insights that I came across and putting it into hopefully something that's easily accessible and easy to read for people to experience themselves.
Yeah,
And hopefully learn something.
Yeah, I just read your book actually. Congratulations on getting it published.
Thank you.
How much of the story actually mirrors your own personal story? Because I know that you cover China within the book as well, and it's also about a lady called Jessica who feels unfulfilled in her corporate life. Would you say that there's elements of you within the story?
It's a good question. One lots of people ask me. Yes, I definitely draw on my own experience within the book, and particularly when she goes to China. I actually went back through my journals. I used to write every day and looked at how I was describing things and the overwhelming feelings that I felt. I think Jessica, the character in the book, touches upon. And so that element of explaining and describing how she was feeling and the different experiences that she came across when she first went to China is definitely based on my own experience. But the character is not me, most definitely not. And I think the joy of writing fiction is that you can really play with it. You can make things up and you can make the characters a lot more complex or have different issues that they need to overcome. And so I had a bit of fun creating the character of Jessica, and she does have challenges. She's definitely not perfect, and she has kind of her own unique qualities, let's say, which I don't share. I have never had some of the experiences that she's had, the infatuations that she's had. I've never experienced myself, but it was great fun to write about her, because sometimes when you observe other people, you can think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they did that. And it kind of, I think because I studied psychology as well, I'm always interested in people and why they might do things and what their motivations are. So I drew on different observations I'd had of people as well, in the workplace, and how they may have added to the character of Jessica. So I'm hoping she's someone that people can relate to, but she's also someone who does have things she has to overcome inside herself as well as outside herself.
And your book is called An Invitation to the Life of Your Dreams, isn't it? And I'll put a link under the interview as well to your book.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, it's hopefully the plan is to have a series of 3. So this is the first one, and it's very much the invitation. It's an introduction and gives a flavour of lots of different perspectives. It's not a kind of set philosophy. It opens up. There's things that people will know lots about, like yoga and mindfulness, but there's also elements in there of things that maybe people wouldn't know so much about, like Tui Na, which is a traditional Chinese acupressure massage, or Qi, which is the vital life force, the energy that flows through us, chakras, things like that. So it's really a sprinkling of lots of different Eastern flavours. The plan is that the next 2 books will then grow with the character and will delve even deeper into her journey of finding herself and finding her sense of fulfillment and purpose in life. So yeah, there'll be a few twists and turns in the plot as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
To be continued.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm really interested to know what drew you to China initially, because I guess a lot of people go to India looking for spirituality, and China might not fall within that initially. So I just wondered, what was the appeal for China?
Well, I think, first of all, I love a challenge. So I saw China as a challenge, mainly from the language point of view and how different the culture is. So I wanted to experience something that was really very removed from my day to day. I'd already travelled to America and Australia and New Zealand and countries that speak English, so it's a lot easier. And I wanted to go somewhere where, people do think of Mandarin or Cantonese as quite a difficult language to learn, and it's a very different culture. So I enjoyed learning about that. And also I wanted to teach, and I went with the British Council, and they have lots and lots of different countries, but a lot of them you had to know the language before you arrived, whereas China was one of the few places where you could go without a background in the language, and they gave us intensive Mandarin training as well as teacher training for the first 3 weeks in Shanghai. And there was a great moment where we were learning Tai Chi, and there was about 90 students, and we were all in a field doing Tai Chi, and the locals just came and gathered around and were laughing so much. I think they found it hilarious that we were all trying to balance, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but it was a really good initiation, I suppose, into a culture that is so rich and so diverse, and that I think you could spend a long time studying, but just going and being in amongst it is a great way to experience it, and not knowing the language. So I'd studied psychology and English literature and became a communication professional, communication specialist, and actually going to China, like Jessica in the book, you're stripped of all your communication abilities. You can't read, you can't speak, you can't write, you can't understand what people are saying. And so it does kind of place you into a scene whereby you have to rely on your other senses. So it does heighten how you see everything else, because you don't have the familiar to fall back on. So I did really enjoy the differences, as well as learning as much as I could while I was there, for survival more than anything, how to get around and order food and things like that.
Yeah. Because it is a completely different culture, isn't it? I know when I went to Beijing, I felt very overwhelmed when I first got there. And did you ever feel that, like, thinking, what am I doing? Or how did you feel when you first arrived? Was it a bit of a culture shock?
Definitely, yeah. I think throughout the whole time I was there, you have, there's so much going on, there's so many people, and there's so many differences that it can be overwhelming, but it's very stimulating as well.
Yeah.
But I was reading through my journals when I was writing the book, and I realised I kept using this one particular word to describe everything, and it was crazy. Everything just seemed crazy. Like the traffic, the people, the buildings, in spectacular buildings, just stunning. But it was so far removed from what I was used to that it did just all seem like crazy in a good way. But it was a real eye-opening experience. And definitely there are always times where you're kind of thinking, gosh, where am I? I'm so far from home.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you love it. And I know in your book that I've also read, which is excellent, you talk about how, as a solo traveller, you do have moments where you feel, oh gosh, what am I doing? And should I be doing this? And everyone is going to have those moments of thinking through what they're doing. But equally, I always found that the hardest things, or the most challenging things, were always the most rewarding. And the best experiences of my life have always been things that have pushed me so far outside of my comfort zone that I've had to step up to them. And as such, I've grown and discovered and become who I am as a result.
That's what I was going to say as well, actually, is that sometimes the things that make you feel the most uncomfortable are the things that is an indication that you're on the right path, and the things that you need to do the most to step out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, we can always just stay in this little safe bubble and not push ourselves and step up, as you just said. So that's great. So
yeah.
Would you say that travelling solo can become a personal transformation? It sounds as if you experienced that on your travels.
Absolutely, yeah. I think travelling, whether it's for a long period of time or even just a short period of time, it does take you out of your comfort zone. It places you into an unfamiliar environment, and that's great for challenging you to think about things differently, because your brain is working in a different way and your perspectives are different, your senses are different. So it does completely kind of shake up how you're feeling. And I say about the short time as well, because when I was working in the corporate world, I do a few solo trips where I'd go and meet up with other groups of solo travellers, and I'd only go for 3 weeks or even 2 weeks in some circumstances, because I didn't have a huge amount of time to take off, and yet I found them so rewarding and so enlightening. I went to Brazil and Argentina and to Thailand, meeting up with other groups of people who I didn't know at all, but I found meeting the people just as interesting as the different places and the different cultures. So I have a lot of friends who haven't been able to take a year off or a 3-month sabbatical as I did, and feel where they may be missing out. And actually I try and encourage them that they can still get the values and the benefits of travel in a shorter kind of normal, what you'd class as a normal working holiday, a couple of weeks off, but just putting themselves outside of their normal day-to-day and going off and having a little adventure and an exploration will ignite their interest as well. And also with the book that I've written, I hope that will be like a little sabbatical for the soul, so you can read it and actually go on a journey just by reading it, so you don't even have to put yourself in the situation if you don't have the time. But I would love for people to feel inspired to then go off and do their own discovery and their own exploration of topics or areas or places that might interest them and resonate with them.
True, I think it will. I think it will inspire people, especially to go to China as well, because you painted such an amazing picture of China, and it might be a country that people haven't considered before, so you might have opened people up to a different destination.
Yeah, well, Huanshan, which is translates as Yellow Mountain, which features in the book, is spectacular, is as beautiful as I describe it, and it is a really impressive climb. You can do it in a day, but there is also a cable cart. A cable car, as I discovered when I climbed up it and then saw the cable car to get down. So yeah, it is really beautiful. And the Chinese belief that you climb the mountain in order to find yourself, and that's what my character does in the book. So it's based on ancient philosophy as well as a sort of fictional story too.
Do you think that a lot of people nowadays are on the treadmill and in a 9 to 5 job and are feeling quite unfulfilled? Because you gave a very inspiring TEDx talk on what makes you happy. And when I was watching that, it actually made me think differently about what I was doing. So do you think there's a lot of people who are stuck in their own routine and aren't satisfied and deep down looking for something else?
Yes. I mean, I can only talk from my personal experience, having been through that journey. I definitely felt that I was running full pace on the treadmill, and it's very hard to take time out to ask yourself the big life questions when you're so busy just surviving, really. Just there's always things to do, and there's always projects and deadlines and things you've got to manage. And equally, a lot of my mum friends now who are looking after children, they're constantly busy and they don't really have the time to sit and reflect on what makes them happy. But I think it's a great question to ask yourself every now and again, just to check in. It's so easy for us to fill our days. We're overwhelmed with information and constantly being marketed at and told what we ought to be doing and should be doing and need to be doing in order to be happy. But quite often those things aren't necessarily what makes us happy. Having the latest technology or gadgets or shoes and handbags ultimately doesn't fulfill what's deep inside us, asking to be inspired. And everybody has a different purpose and a different passion, and it is, I think, really important just to check in with yourself every now and again and think, okay, what is it that makes me feel really excited? What is it that ignites me, that makes me feel alive? And it could be dancing, singing, yoga, performing, writing. It could be a number of different things. But making time to do the things that make us happy is really important. And I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. We're so busy serving others and doing the things that pay the bills that it's hard to think, okay, no, actually, I want to make time, just 1 hour a week even, to do something that makes me happy. It could be reconnecting with nature, but just taking the time to think about what it is that you really enjoy doing. And I think it comes down to mindset as well. So it's become much better understood, this idea of mindfulness and being mindful about the present moment that we're in, but also about the thoughts that we have. And by thinking in a positive way, by thinking about what makes you happy, you can actually feel happier because you're thinking about something. So I've got a lovely quote in the book about what you think you become, Gautama Buddha. And it's really true. If you're thinking about positive things, your subconscious mind will actually take you there. It doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So you can imagine, if you're going to sleep, imagine a beautiful scene of lying on a beach relaxing, and your subconscious mind will actually think you're there. So it will give you that feel-good sensation, release the endorphins and chemicals that you would get from actually being there. So there's all sorts of things that you can do to kind of mind over matter. But what I found very interesting, and what I shared in the TED Talk, were the two other elements of what makes you happy. And one is about generosity. So actually it's very well known now and documented that people get a sense of happiness from helping others. So when you do a good deed, it makes you feel good. We're biologically programmed that way. And so by helping other people, you feel good. And also if you see other people happy, then it makes you feel happy. So it's this virtuous circle of everybody helping each other. And the third point I made in the talk was around actually feeling grateful. That's a huge switch. It's a switch that you can flick. So you're not feeling happy, you can just take even 30 seconds or a minute just to think about what you feel really grateful for. And it can be anything from family, friends, or just the fact that you're alive and breathing, or you have a brain to be thinking about the question. But it is a really simple thing that anyone can do in as little as 30 seconds, and it's like switching a light switch on, and it can just make you feel so much better instantly. So I found that very interesting in terms of looking at lots of different research and books and things, but ultimately I think it came down to those three things: mindset, generosity, and gratitude. Yes.
Do you think that your idea or your key to happiness can change as well? Because I know that in my 20s, what used to make me happy was travelling, and it used to ignite my passion, and being somewhere new and the new smells and the new senses and connecting with locals. That used to be my number one passion, and that would make me happy. And now, obviously at a different time of life, and now what makes me happy is helping to empower other people to do that, and helping others to kind of step, I know that probably sounds a bit cheesy, but try and step into their own power, but believe in themselves and realise that they don't have to do things because society tells them that they can do things. So now I get more satisfaction from listening to other people's stories rather than travelling myself. It's kind of lost that spark for me. So do you think that your happiness can change?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you just put that perfectly, the way you described it there. And it would be really boring if it didn't change, I think, wouldn't it?
True,
So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It changes and evolves as we all do. And what once makes us happy isn't necessarily what might make us happy tomorrow. But as long as you kind of take the time to tune in to yourself and your sense of what it is that's making you feel alive and excited and inspired, and follow that, I think that is our intuition speaking to us, or our kind of inner guidance, and it will evolve and go down a journey with us as we grow.
Yeah, so even if you do find yourself having made a decision and being on a certain path, you don't have to continue with that if it doesn't feel right to you anymore and your intuition is telling you something different. Then it's time to have a look at what you really want to do, and maybe take a week away and get back in touch with yourself and think, okay, maybe this isn't working, and it's okay, I'm at a different stage, and now what do I want to do, or what's going to make me tick?
Yeah, definitely. And it's what I suppose I went through when I used to work 20-hour days. I was a bit of a workaholic, and I got to where I wanted to get to with my career, and then I kind of just stepped away, and you think, okay, why did I do that? But it was what I wanted to do, and it got me to where I wanted to be. But you can only ever be in the moment. You can't be in the past or in the future. So you've got to, every experience makes you who you are. It brings you to the place and the person that you are in that one moment. And so every moment can be a cliff that you can jump into a new path. It's an opportunity. So if you've gone down one route and it served you or hasn't served you, depending, it's not feeling right, then it's any time is a good time to think about, okay, what is it I really do want, and where am I headed? one of the questions I love to ask, and I ask it to myself regularly, is what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail?
I love that question. I've heard that before.
Yeah. It's a really good question, because it allows you the space to dream and imagine the ultimate lifestyle, if you like. So what could you do? You could do anything in the whole world. What would it be? And the idea of, if you knew you couldn't fail, I think is really important as well, because I think, as with most things in life, it is often fear that stops us from doing them.
Yes.
So whether it's traveling or going on a solo adventure, or not giving up a career or a relationship that's not making us happy, because we're scared, we're afraid that we might be doing the wrong thing, or that we might do the wrong thing. And actually, by banishing that little voice, that little negative voice that's in our head saying, well, what if, and you can't do this, and you shouldn't do that, by just quietening it for a few minutes and saying, okay, if I knew I couldn't fail, if there was a magic wand and it was about to transport me, where would I go? What would I do? Who would I be? And really try and visualize it as clearly and as vividly as you can. And then use that excitement, that energy, to project where you'd like to be. And it's amazing how just in 5 minutes or so you can kind of come up with this really exciting vision. And it can change, like you were just saying, it can change from day to day, let alone year to year. But it's a really good way, I think, of just checking in. Where would I love to be if I could do anything and be anyone and go anywhere? And don't let the fear hold you back.
Was that the turning point for you, deciding to leave your career after listening to the TEDx talks and realising that you wanted to make yourself happy?
I guess it probably was. Yeah, not being able to answer the question why was I doing what I was doing, I think it just started eating away at me at the back of my mind. It was like a niggling little thought, and I couldn't place it to begin with. It wasn't like a bolt of lightning that people say. You just had this aha moment. It wasn't quite as drastic as that, but it was just something at the back of my mind, and I think it got louder and louder until I took notice and gave myself the time and space to explore the feelings I was having, as well as reading every book and listening to everything I could on fulfillment and happiness and different perspectives on finding your sense of self and fulfillment in life. So I did really draw upon lots of different perspectives, I suppose, and that was my own personal journey. And similar to you, I'm now at a stage where I like to share that with others. My ambition, or my passion, is about connecting people and ideas and sharing experiences that I think may help others to enjoy or to be the best sense of themselves. And so that's really what I wanted to do with the book. And it does definitely draw on the fact that I've been through it myself, but hopefully I've brought together some of the different perspectives. So it's not just me, but it's actually lots of wisdom from other people that I've come across over the years and pulled it together into one place.
Is that also your vision with the Rainmaker Foundation as well, to connect people and bring them together and help make a difference?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So we built a community of people, and they're called Rainmakers, and they're people who are committed to making a difference. And like I mentioned earlier, they could be in lots of different ways. So they might have business experience that they could give to a charity, or contacts. They know people who might be able to help in certain ways, or they have money that they'd like to donate, or their time that they would like to give. But they want to make a difference. They're committed to doing the best they can to help others. And we use the phrase to create a world where what matters most is what you do for others. So it's this sense of serving everybody and not just self-serving. The founder, Mike Dixon, he's written books on generosity, and he looks at these ideas of happiness and generosity, and how by connecting with people by helping others, by connecting with your sense of self, you actually can make a huge difference. It doesn't have to be really big, drastic, life-changing, give up your career and go and work for a charity. Everyone can do a really small thing just in a couple of minutes if they wanted to. But like I mentioned earlier, it then creates this virtuous circle of goodness where if you do something for somebody, then you feel good about it, which helps you, and then it helps others. So it is a kind of a much better approach, I think, to helping everybody in ways that are not just self-serving.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And it reminds me of, I can't remember the exact saying, but that change starts within. So if you become true to yourself and you help others, then other people are going to see that and want to not kind of do the same as you as well. So you can make a difference even if you don't think that, like you say, leaving your job and going away for a year and volunteering, if that isn't possible, you can still make a difference just by doing a small act of generosity.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a charity even. You can phone up a relative that you haven't spoke to in a while who you think might be a bit lonely and appreciate a phone call. It can be really small things, or even just smiling at people. It's great fun when you start looking at all the things you can do. We had a lot of fun in London doing sort of contagious smiles. So you smile at people and you notice that they start smiling, and then before you know it, everyone's sort of smiling around you. It's like yawns. Smiles are just as infectious as yawns. If you smile at people, then they start smiling, and as soon as you smile, you release the chemicals, and the feel good feelings that you get make you actually feel happy. So you can trick your mind into being happier just by smiling, even if it's a fake smile to begin with. It does actually release the right feel good feelings.
Yeah, you made me smile now just by talking about the act of smiling. And you don't know that somebody could be having a really bad day, and if you just smile at them, you could really make a difference to that person's day from just a 2-second act. Yeah.
So, you hear all these stories. I don't know if you have come across any of them, but we used to come across a lot where people would say like these tiny things had made such a difference. People who are on the edge, they're having a really bad day, or they're just feeling completely lost and alone or isolated, and it's a small act of kindness that just brings them back into their present and makes them feel connected again. And I think in today's modern life, we're so busy, we're so isolated from people, that actually just reconnecting with people on a person-to-person level can be all it takes to make a real difference to somebody's day or even to their life.
Exactly. It's quite ironic, isn't it, that in this world of social media and social interaction, we're more disconnected from each other than we ever have been.
Yeah.
Even if somebody on the outside looks as if they have everything sorted and their life is amazing, but people may have issues that you don't know about, and you can still feel incredibly lonely even when you're in a crowd of people. So I realise that a lot of people are just looking for connection, real, proper connections with people.
So it's so true, and it's so important. I think every single person has challenges that they're overcoming, whether they look the happiest, most confident person in the world. We don't know what they're feeling, and even sometimes they don't know at that particular moment. It won't be until they go home to an empty house that they suddenly realise, oh gosh, we don't know whatever is going on in people's lives. I saw a lovely quote the other day, which was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of, love, when I'm being the most unlovable, it's when I need the most love. It was something along those lines. And it kind of made me think, sometimes when people are being a bit nasty, or when they've actually, they have issues that they're projecting, that's when they actually need the most compassion or the most love, because they're dealing with something and they might be projecting it in an aggressive way or an angry way or a way that isn't very nice, but sometimes that's actually when they need to be understood, and it's not very easy to do always, but I think of the Dalai Lama. What would the Dalai Lama do?
Yeah, and just live in the now, which is a huge lesson that solo travel has taught me, actually, because you don't look at the day before. You might have a rough idea of where you want to go the following week, but you're forced to live within that moment and be open to opportunities or new people. So it really helps align you again. What would you say to somebody who's thinking about embarking on a solo trip but is feeling scared or unsure?
I would say do it. Yeah, I think the idea of embarking on a solo trip can be really scary. It can be really daunting. But as we've kind of looked at already, the most challenging things are often the most rewarding. And by stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing something completely different, you'll learn so much, not just about the place you're going to explore, but also about yourself and what you're capable of doing.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time, Holly. And I put a link to your book. There's so much to put a link to your book, your TEDx talk. So I wish you every success in the future, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for listening to our Girl About the Globe podcast, making solo travel easier for you. Find everything that you need for your solo travels at girlabouttheglobe.com, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.